Welcome to Love and the Marriage Squeeze, the podcast. I'm your host, Enyetia. I'm also the producer and director of the docuseries Love and the Marriage Squeeze, which takes a look at the lives of African-American women to uncover why so many of them, nearly 70%, are still single and looking for love. Now, this docuseries is one full of heart that follows women looking for love. It's full of heartbreaks and trials and triumphs and the tears and the challenges that go into finding love. Now, this docuseries also covers a bit of history. So today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, Black history, and it's Black History Month. And I'm so excited to welcome one of my brilliant friends. I have many, and this is definitely one of my brilliant friends. It's Dr. W. Marvin Dulaney. He is the Deputy Director and Chief Operations Officer for the Dallas African American Museum. He's also an Associate Professor of History Emeritus, former Interim Director of the Center for African American Studies, and the former Chair of the Department of History at the University of Texas at Arlington. Now, before retiring in 2016, he taught history for 42 years at 4 universities. He's also taught courses in Charleston, South Carolina, and Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. He's taught in these communities in an effort to literally take history to the people. And he's published and edited 4 books. Like I said, he's brilliant, and you're going to meet him. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Marvin Dulaney.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. Well, I'm super excited to have you here, and super excited, especially because it's Black History Month. If anyone knows Black history, it is you. You are the person I go to for insights and information. And let me tell y'all, he is so amazing. Every time we sit down and have a conversation, I learn so much. And not only do I learn a lot, I always walk away with homework. And I mean homework in a good way. Like, here's a book you should read. Here's a film you should check out. Here's this, here's that, here's this event. Like, so much knowledge and information, and it's just exciting. So I'm celebrating Black History Month, looking to learn more about our history, about our culture, and no one better here than Dr. Marvin Dulaney to teach us today. So how are you celebrating Black History Month?
Well, Black History Month is, I'm going to just say this, it's a sort of a mixed bag for me. I love Black History Month on one hand because people really get into the theme, which of course is African Americans in the arts. But on the other hand, I get asked to do a presentation here, do a workshop there, and they don't understand that you can't be all these places in 29 days, and of course usually it's just 28 days. But overall, I enjoy Black History Month, and it gives me an opportunity to get out and spread the information about the African American experience in this country, and in a way that typically will not be done at any other time during the year.
Absolutely, which is a shame because we could be celebrating it all year long, 365 days. And I know you get all those invitations to come out and to teach and to share because what you have is so valuable. Our history, our culture, all that knowing is so valuable. And today, I saw you in action. Dr. Dulaney was at a church today teaching Black history, and that room was packed. It was packed. And it was the middle of the day, so it was packed largely with senior citizens, right? But it's so interesting that, senior citizens are showing up because they're like, I need to learn my history, right? It's not just for the young people. There's so much that so many of us who are out of school have missed and are longing for and want to understand. So I'm excited that you're out there doing that, teaching me and teaching everyone else.
Yeah, it's. I had a lot of fun today. I talked about African American historiography, which of course is the study of the writing of history, and also I got to talk about Africa, and of course the role that Africa plays in the world. The fact that all of us come from Africa, whether we're black, white, brown, or red, but always make issue this caveat: the white people and the Asian people just left Africa sooner than the rest of us. Yeah.
Right, right, exactly. And so many people don't realize it, right? Or don't recognize that we all, we are one. We come from one place, right? we come from Africa, which I love. So there's so much to love about our history and our culture there, stemming from Africa. Can you tell us a little bit about the history and the origin of Black History Month? Kind of when it started, why it started.
Now, officially, Black History Month started in 1976 during the the bicentennial of the country. But um, uh, the organization that I'm a part of, which is the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, originated back in 1915, led by an African American historian who had graduated from Harvard in 1912, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, and he's called the Father of Black History. He started the Association for the Study of Negro Life in 1915. Then, I guess 11 years later, in 1926, he started Negro History Week. And Negro History Week took place during the second week of February to sort of encompass the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, who Woodson felt were two of the greatest Americans ever in terms of helping African Americans to obtain their freedom from slavery in this country. So every year between 1926 and 1976, they celebrated Negro History Week. Now, Woodson aimed Negro History Week at Black schools, at Black children, and it wasn't supposed to just be confined to 1 week or 1 month, but it was supposed to be the culmination of a year-long study of Black history by young people, where they would develop skits, uh, they write papers and do posters and do a whole host of things to prepare then in February for the culmination, where they would be able to get up and read their poetry, perform their skits and plays, and of course read the papers and present the papers that they had done over the course of the year. So Negro History Week was just 1 week where they would celebrate the culmination of a year-long study of Black history. So in 1976, as I said, it was increased to 1 month by the association along with the federal government. And so we've been celebrating Black History Month now since 1976.
I feel like it's so needed. And the idea that it was the culmination of a year's worth of study of Black history and not just a week or a month.
Right.
I think that's a big takeaway
Let
here.
me tell you the famous joke, and I usually use it, when I go out and do presentations during Black History Month. And I'll say, well, that we celebrate Black History Month, but of course we get the shortest month of the year to do it. It's only 28 days, or like this year 29, but still we're 2 days short from a typical month to celebrate Black History Month. And so I'll say, well, it's always Black people always get the short end of the stick. We get February to shift to celebrate Black History Month, and it's the shortest month of the year.
It's so true.
Is the birthdays of Lincoln and Douglas in February, Langston Hughes, W.E.B. Du Bois, and several other famous African Americans were born in February. So it's actually a classic month in terms of the celebration of the birthdays of important Americans in African American history.
Well, I love that. I didn't realize all those birthdays were that month. And so now it just makes more sense. And you know how Black folks do. Since we have less time, we just got to go harder on it. We got to go all in on the Black History Month.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you do personally to celebrate Black History Month? Because I was thinking about it this year and I really wanted to kind of personalize what I was doing, like do more study on my own, look things up. I really wanted to dig in. And interestingly enough, in digging in, I learned that there were themes, which, it's a hot mess, but I just learned this year that there are themes to Black History Month. Like you said, this one is years African Americans in the art. And so I was like, okay, cool. So that means I can just, research those things, study those things, think about, all the contributions that we've made to the arts. And it's a way to, think about celebrating it personally, a way to study it. So
well,
I was excited about that.
Before, I'm going to say this sort of in jest, before I became famous, I tried my best to go to go to all of the Black History Month programs in the Metroplex in Dallas and Fort Worth, and so that was something really special for me. And back when I was still teaching, Stokely Carmichael from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee would come to UT every year. Uh,
Wow.
Nikki Giovanni would be at SMU. Dr. Ben Yochanan would be here in Dallas, being sponsored by the Third Eye. So it'd be all these programs, and I couldn't wait to go to these programs because you didn't get them the rest of the year. So it was a wonderful opportunity for me to learn, celebrate, and just sort of be reaffirmed by listening to the
Hmm.
poetry of Nikki Giovanni. In fact, I remember Maya Angelou was at University of Texas Dallas up in Richardson one year, and so all that is just fantastic. But as I said, now that I'm famous, I'm the one running around doing these programs at various places in the Metroplex.
For those who do not know, tell us more about ASALA. Tell us what it is, what the acronym stands for,
Sure.
and what it does.
Sure. ASALA stands for the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. As I noted, when Woodson started it in 1915, it was the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. Again, back when we were Negroes, or some would say back when we were colored. And as you know, we've changed who we were over time. We've gone from Negroes to colored to Black to finally African Americans. The association, again, promotes the study of African American history. It promotes the preservation of African American history. Then it also promotes the presentation of African American history, trying to share that history with as many people as possible. Carter G. Woodson did something really special when he started the association in 1915. In fact, I talked about that today during my presentation at Mount Olive Baptist Church in Arlington. The fact was, in 1915, there were only 6 African Americans who had PhDs in history. Now, typically, historical associations are based on historians who have, went to college and got either masters or PhDs in history, and they make up these associations, these historical associations. I belong to 5 others.
Wow,
I'm gonna name
you're
them for
busy.
you because I always get a laugh out of that. I'm in the Southern Historical Association. I'm in the Texas State Historical Association. I'm in the South Carolina Historical Association. Um, I'm in the Organization of American Historians and the American Historical Association. 5 of these organizations. Now, I tell
Wow.
audiences today, I don't go to
Wow.
those conferences anymore because you go there and people be reading papers to you, and I'll be falling asleep, put you to sleep. But I go to Asala's conferences because Asala is different. It's not
Huh.
historians reading papers to you. It's actually a whole variety of activities, and we focus on lay people. When Woodson started the association, he took it to the churches, to the schools, to Black civic and social organizations to get members because there was only 6 Black historians, so he couldn't form a national association with only 6 people. So,
Right.
yeah. So he started in the churches. He started again with teachers in the public schools. He went to the fraternities and sororities. He went to the fraternities Alpha Phi Alpha, Sigma Pi Phi to get members into the association, which made it a different type of organization. So when you go to our conferences, it's not just a bunch of historians reading papers and putting people to sleep. We have music. We have a Friday night out. Last year when we did the conference, we had the Motown Review on Friday night, and so that was
Wow.
really great to be at a conference
Yeah.
like ours to have the Motown Review. We have a film festival as a part of the conference, so it's just great. And then, as I said, you meet all these lay people from the local community and people who come from across the country because they're interested in Black history. So it's just fantastic and fabulous to have this sort of diversity of people who are in the association.
I love it. I mean, this sounds like fun. It like you said, it does not sound like boring, we're gonna read papers. It
Mhm.
sounds like a whole lot of fun. So and you say it's for lay people.
Yes.
So for people, those who are listening who are like, "Hey, y'all are having a good time with this history, and I love my people."
Mhm. Yes.
How would we get involved with the Sala? I mean, how
Sure.
do we support it?
Sure, you can join it 2 ways. As I said, we have, local branches. There's a branch here in Dallas, there's a branch in New York, there's a branch in Washington, DC.
Okay. Okay, wait, you just glossed over something. You just said that there's a branch here in Dallas,
Yes.
but can you tell us the name of the branch here in Dallas? Because y'all, when I said that we had someone really special, and I meant it. Tell us, what is the name of the Dallas branch of Asala?
Well, I'm humble and modest. The branch here is named the W. Marvin Dulaney branch of Asala. So again, we have the W. Marvin
Mhm.
Delaney branch here in Dallas. We have a
Right
branch
on,
in
right on. Your accolades, give you your accolades.
Well,
Yes.
I'm gonna confess I voted against naming it after me because I'm just a little too humble to have something like that named after me. I suggested Woodson. I suggested local people like Juanita Craft and um, Maynard Jackson and A. Maceo Smith, but they wouldn't go for it, and I got it. My name stuck on it. And again, I'm honored,
Absolutely.
but it's a
Yeah.
little embarrassing, that I go to these national conferences and people say, "Man, you got a branch of a solid name for you. What did you do? How much did you pay them?"
You do, because you've contributed so much. You do. You contribute so much and you continue to teach and you don't stop. You
Yeah.
retired. I remember us having this conversation about you saying you were going to retire
Uh-huh.
and because you wanted to. And I know you've been just as busy since you retired,
Yeah.
still continuing to teach and still continuing to serve.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
you deserve all those accolades and to have
Yes.
your name on that branch. So,
Well, let me finish my
yes.
pitch for Asala. Again, you can join the local branches if you're in one of the major cities like Chicago, New York, Cleveland, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Miami, Florida, Atlanta, and so on. But you can also join the national organization. We have a wonderful website, www.asalh.org.
I love it. I love it. I think it's just such a really good way to support our historians who
Uh-huh.
are preserving and sharing the knowledge
Mhm.
of our history and our culture. And so, and in speaking about that, promoting and preserving, there's been a lot of talk in the news lately
Mhm.
with some of the school districts and some of the states reducing the amount of Black history that is being taught there. What do you think about that? And what's really going on for those who aren't familiar with,
Sure.
the opposition to teaching Black history in schools?
Sure. One of these crazy conservatives decided that schools were teaching critical race theory. And of course, they misdefined critical race theory. And the state legislatures, particularly in the South, Florida, Alabama, and of course, in Texas are sort of the classic examples. They passed legislation to stop the teaching of critical race theory. And again, critical race theory is not being taught anywhere because it's a law school concept that ties race to various American institutions. And so they don't teach that type of information in school, public schools at all. But they tied Black history to critical race theory. And they focused on trying to make sure that white children did not feel bad and uncomfortable when they were taught about slavery, the civil rights movement, and some of the racial violence that has occurred in this country against African Americans, against Mexican Americans, and against indigenous peoples. So basically, they've restricted the Texas legislature has restricted the teaching of Black history uh, to, to take out of the curriculum anything that they felt would make white children feel uncomfortable when the subject of race, slavery, civil rights, and racial violence came up. Now, it's sort of a little crazy because I teach African American. I've taught African American history for years, and the way you teach it is that you don't look at the students in the classroom and say, your ancestors did all this terrible stuff to my ancestors. No, that's crazy. No one teaches history like that. no one in the, and I usually say, if I have to preface the teaching about slavery, um, none of you in here owned anybody. None of you in here owned any slaves. None of you were part of a lynching party, and so
Right.
you don't need to
Right.
feel guilty about anything. And
Of
even if it was
course.
your ancestors, that's not you.
Right.
You are here today and now, and you should feel proud of who you are and your history. And of course, part of what we're trying to teach is the whole idea of empathy. you know
Hmm.
we want young people, particularly young white people, to develop this empathy for African Americans. I
Yes.
do police history and police studies, and one of the things I've seen is that police officers don't have empathy for Black people. They think we are these terrible people who are lazy, just looking to get ahead, committing all of the crime in our society, which of course is a lie. But they've been sort of miseducated, so that when they encounter us on the streets, they have no empathy. When you see
Hmm.
someone throw somebody's mother down on the ground and put his knee in her back, you have to say, what kind of human being does that to another human being?
Right.
Who taught him that he should do this to a Black mother or to a 10-year-old child? And of course, it's because they don't have the empathy, because they have not learned African American history and come to understand our struggle and our contributions to American society, which has been major, by the way. So, and we can talk
Of
about that
course.
too. All right.
Of course. Of
Uh
course.
huh.
Yeah, because it all leads up to, like you said, those interactions. If you don't understand the people, you
Hmm.
don't understand their history, you don't see
Yes.
them as people who are valuable.
Hmm.
When you run into them on the streets, these Black folks, and how you treat them
Hmm.
is definitely going to be a result of what you've been taught or what you
Right.
haven't been taught, all the stereotypes, all the prejudice, and it's important. And I would say that this idea of not wanting to make white children feel bad in school when they learn about slavery and racism
Hmm.
is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's not about making them feel bad. I want everybody, Black, white, yellow, green, tan, whatever, red. When you hear about racism and slavery in America and
Hmm.
prejudice anywhere, I want everybody to feel bad.
Yeah.
I want everybody to be like,
Yes.
oh, that's empathy.
Right.
That's hitting in the heart. We
Right.
should want, when we tell these stories, people to feel, you know, the hurt. Not that we want them to feel bad, but we want, it's like you said, it's that empathy. We want them to understand, hey, other people have suffered. And whenever someone else is suffering, if we are compassionate people, we are empathetic people,
Uh huh.
then we feel that, right? And we want to make sure that we care for those people or care for others around us, which would include anybody of any color. So this idea of not wanting to make white kids feel bad is ridiculous, because Black folks feel bad when we hear about racism and slavery.
Hmm.
When I watch a movie about slavery, it feels bad.
Yeah. Yes.
It feels bad
I've
because I see
believe it or
people
not, as a
suffering.
historian, I can't watch I can't watch these movies about slavery anymore, because they do make you feel. And again, and this is after 40 plus years of my teaching this myself. Yet, one of our conversations, and I know I'm not supposed to talk about conversations that you and I had that no one else is privy to, but the
That's okay.
conversation
We
we
can always edit.
the
What you gonna say?
the conversation that you and I had about Emancipation, that movie with Will Smith, you know, um, it, and how it, was just terrible. Some of the brutality and racism that was in that film. I could barely sit through it, and the only reason I could sit through it because I knew what the ending was going to be and how positive and powerful the ending was going to be.
Right.
Otherwise, I'd had to get up and leave, or hide my eyes with some of the scenes of the brutality and racism that the enslaved people were catching in this film. Again, it's just a
Right.
film, but it
It's a
still,
film.
hits you, and it has an impact on you in terms of the brutality and violence. And you wonder, again, it makes you wonder again, how can one human being treat another one like that? That's
Right.
for example, I can't see myself whipping anybody. I can't see
Mm-mm.
myself doing any violence to anybody, particularly if they haven't done
Mm-mm.
anything to me. And beating someone
Right.
up just because they're black or white, that's just crazy. But in these
It
films,
is.
it's commonplace. Yeah. So.
It is, and it's so interesting because one of the things that we've talked about, are these different films that feature slavery, right?
Mhm.
And another thing, just if you don't know, listeners, but Dr. Dulaney has also taught a class that we looked at media and we looked at films. I say
Mhm.
we because like I wasn't in the class, but I did talk to him about the classes and I did visit one of his classes when he was teaching it. And he was going through these different films that, featured stories of slavery. And it is hard to watch those. And I'm with you. And I have to admit, like, you were like, "Hey, have you seen Emancipation?" And I was like, "No, not yet."
Mhm.
Because often for me, when these films come out, like I'm a filmmaker, I know we're supposed to go out and support them right away. I know that.
Mhm.
But sometimes I do not go right away. I might buy a ticket and not go.
Mhm.
Sometimes I've done that, buy a ticket and
Uh-huh.
I don't go
Uh-huh.
because I am not in the mindset to sit and watch a movie about slavery and people beating, Black people being brutalized.
Mhm.
It hurts. It is trauma. It
Mhm.
is secondhand trauma.
Yes.
And we see a lot of it already in the news. And it is very difficult because as humans, we're empathetic, those of us who are empathetic, those of us who have compassion, it is difficult to sit through those films. And like you said, sitting through Emancipation was good because like you said, I knew that there was going to be a good ending in it, but it is very hard. And I also wonder, like, as a filmmaker, I'm like, I was watching Emancipation and I was like, I couldn't have made this. Like, I, I couldn't have done it. It would be too distressful as a filmmaker for me to do it. Like, I don't know if I have it in me to make a film like this about slavery.
Mhm.
I don't know if I could do it.
Well, no, I couldn't. I can show clips to make points, but sitting through them indeed is real difficult. Yeah.
Very, very, very tough. But I do applaud all the filmmakers who are going out there and making those films
Uh-huh.
because we need that. We need that education for people to be able to go back and reference those no matter when they see them, right? Because we know that these films will last and people in future generations will see them and
Mhm.
it will be meaningful. So, knowing that there are states, school districts that are trying to take Black history out of the schools, what can we do to keep Black history curriculum in our schools?
Now, I'm going to have to confess, this has sort of been a 50-year battle for me. Wow. And so I'm sort of shocked that we've done sort of actually sort of a 360. When I was younger, in the 70s, we were trying to get Black history in school districts. I remember going to a school board meeting in Springfield, Ohio. They were getting ready to try to dump the Black history class in this system. So I was asked to come as a historian to come and justify teaching Black history and keeping the course in the curriculum in Springfield, Ohio. We won that battle, and then there were several battles like that. I remember in Dayton, Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio, here in Dallas to a certain extent, we've had to do that, and more recently in 2019. And I was shocked that we still had to do this. We had to when I say we, me and my colleague Robert Edison, we had to create a new course in Black history to again for the Dallas School District, and then it became the course for the state of Texas, approved by the State Board of Education. And again, here I am constantly having to fight this battle, trying to keep Black history in the schools. And so, uh, the course that I taught this morning at the Mount Olive Baptist Church in Arlington was actually a sort of a proactive course. The minister there said he went to a synagogue, and one of the things he found at the synagogue was that they were teaching Jewish history to the children every Saturday morning at the synagogue. And so he said, then one of the women there says, "Why do you people," and he said she did say that, "you people, why do you people allow someone else to teach your children history when you should teach it yourself. And so that gave him the motivation then to create this series that I'm doing to teach the people in his church Black history. So so we're teaching 2 classes a day every Tuesday through April. And again, he thinks that if he can teach the adults in his church, then they can go back and teach the children that they encounter in terms of the curriculum and understanding of Black history. We gave out a handout, a booklet of handouts that are primary sources that they can use in terms of teaching Black history to their children and relatives and so on. So we're trying to plant a spark. You know, we're it's not that we've given up trying to teach it in the public schools. We're going to take on that battle too. Fortunately, in Fort Worth and Dallas, in spite of the state board and in spite of the governor here, they are still doing the curriculum that me and Robert Edison introduced in 2019. Well, actually, we started in 2017 in Fort Worth, and then of course we did 2019 in Dallas. So they're still teaching our curriculum.
That's wonderful.
Because we were tasked with infusing the social studies and language arts curricula with African American content, which is again really easy. And so we just really enjoyed doing that. And both of the social studies departments in Dallas and Fort Worth were really gung ho to get that done. And they actually paid us to do that, by the way. Typically I don't get paid, so that was a great experience to do the work I love to do, and then actually to get paid for it. But so we're still
Absolutely.
working
Because Black history is valuable, right?
Yes.
So when you get paid
Yes.
to create a curriculum,
Mhm.
it says that Black history is valuable.
Yes,
it
it
says
is.
that Black people
Yes,
are
it
valuable
is.
and that we matter. So I love that.
We're not giving up on the school districts, but we're not going to rely strictly on the public schools to teach Black history. We are doing a series at the African American Museum. Actually, we just did one in the fall. We're going to start another one in March. So we're not giving up. We're going to keep pushing the letter, as they say, and fight this battle against the governor to show him he can't beat us. He can't stop us from teaching what needs to be taught to our children.
Yes, we have got to continue the fight. We've got to keep that fight up because it's our history, it's our culture. And if we let that go, then it's gone.
Yes, yes, it is.
It's gone. And there are too many people who've paved the way for us.
Yes.
For us to let that go. So, and I thank you for doing that and being a part of it. So that's
you're
huge.
welcome. Yeah.
That's huge. Hey there. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the podcast. Stick around because up next, Dr. Dulaney reveals his 12 years of miseducation. And we discuss the terrible lynching that helped to spark the historic African American and Jewish American Coalition. Our conversation continues on Love and the Marriage Squeeze, the podcast. So, what role do you think like grassroots activism and community engagement play in the observance and promotion of Black History Month, like both historically and in contemporary context?
The Black Studies movement, the Black Studies movement started in the latter part of the 1960s, and that actually grew out of the Civil Rights Movement, where members or people, particularly SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, when they were in Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia, one of the things they tried to do was teach Black history to the young people in the South in some of their voter registration projects. And so Black activism was very important in terms of getting the Black Studies movement started in the latter part of the 1960s. And in fact, there wouldn't have been this push for Black studies if there hadn't been these activists who came out of the Civil Rights Movement and decided, we need to bring to our hometowns and to our public schools this same activism that we did in Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia when we were trying to teach the young people in the South. So, and of course, my example would be, having gotten a PhD. I don't remember when I got it, but anyway, having gotten a PhD and then having a son, I had to make that joke because it's been so long, you sort of forget. Having a son
It's
in
a
the
lot of
Dallas,
history.
yeah, that's it. That history just sort of, you forget some of that history. Anyway, having a son in the Dallas school district sort of motivated me to get involved. I remember a specific incident. There was culture night at his school. He went to this school in Dallas in Oak Cliff called Adele Turner Elementary School. So they had culture night. Okay, so we got German culture, Italian culture, um, what Polish culture. We got all these cultures, and then at the end, some of us looked at it and said, "Wait a minute, they didn't do African American culture," and yeah,
What?
and so we stood up and
Wow.
said, "Wait a minute, what's going on here? How come our children has to learn and observe everybody else's culture but their own?" And I went to this
Absolutely.
teacher, a young white woman, so I couldn't blame her. She was miseducated. So I went to her classroom. She has a picture of Ronald Reagan on the wall. Who else? George Washington,
Mhm.
Thomas Jefferson. Okay.
Mhm.
But I said, wait a minute, how come you don't have a single image of a black person in this classroom? And all the students
Right.
in there are black. She said, well, I don't know how to find them. So of course, obviously, me being me, I brought her 10 pictures in for everybody from Martin Luther King to Malcolm X to Fatty Lou Hamer, you know,
Yes.
and just laid her out. Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman, and then of course at the end of the year she did give them back. I was surprised, and she said she thanked me for helping her to make her classroom relevant to the children that she was teaching. So
Yes.
again, it takes activism. It takes us being on top of things and paying attention.
Mhm.
Again, I go to her classroom and there's Ronald Reagan. Come on, and George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, and no, not a single black face. And I said to myself, she's replicating what I went through. I think I told you
Right.
that I went through 12 years of school, didn't learn about a single black woman, man, African man, woman who had ever done anything in
Right.
history. So I was thoroughly miseducated. And as I said, if it had not been for the Black Studies movement at the end of the 1960s, that miseducation may have continued with me. But I saw, I in fact told the class today, I saw that students were protesting around the country to that they wanted Black studies and Black history courses in their high schools, in colleges and universities, and literally, they protested to begin the diversification of the college curriculums across the country. And of course, it's not a fait accompli, but it's sort of still going on. And you have now Black studies programs that have been in some colleges and universities for over 50 years. So, so indeed, but it took being conscious of what was actually happening in colleges and universities and in the public schools to make a difference. So activism, very, very important.
So I want to stop you here. So what we're saying is, just so that we are loud and clear, that as parents, we cannot sit back and let our history go
Hmm.
without being taught.
Right.
We have to take the time to make sure to have those conversations with teachers,
Hmm.
going down to the school board meetings, whatever we need to do
Hmm.
to make sure that Black history is taught in schools. And then also to make sure that we're teaching in our homes. Is this what we're saying? I just want to make sure, I want our listeners to know that there are some action items here at the end of the day.
Yes, absolutely. And to have books and images in your home that promote our culture and our history, because there's no better way. We are the first teachers of our children, and we have to take that responsibility. So we can't just
Yes.
rely on the schools. Again, the pastor at Mount Olive decided that he was going to take the responsibility in his church of making sure that the people at his church learn Black history so that they can share it with their children. Yeah.
And I guess that's really the first action item, right? Is to educate ourselves on Black history. Go down to the local Black bookstore, pick
Right.
up a book,
Yes.
read, join organizations
Uh-huh.
like Asala so
Uh-huh.
that you can be informed about
Yes.
Black history. Because there's so much that, like, I know I don't know. Like, I'm constantly
Sure.
discovering new things about Black history, about African history. And it's like,
Mhm.
wow, like, I would have never discovered this, unless I had run
Sure.
across something, down a rabbit hole that I'm searching on the internet or, talking and having lunch with you.
Hmm.
So I think that's so powerful.
Yes.
And then the other thing, which this is so thrilling to me. So you mean to tell me that a Christian pastor went down to the synagogue, got down to the synagogue, a Black Christian pastor got down to the synagogue, and they turned around and the lady looked at him and said, "You people need to be teaching your own history."
Hmm. Hmm. Yes. He said that's what happened. And he was actually embarrassed. Why do you people let other people teach your history to your children? And of course, they don't teach the history to their children. That was also the point that she was making. That at least in the Jewish synagogue, they teach the history of Jewish Americans uh,
Yes.
every Saturday.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. As it should be. Give our listeners a little bit of insight on this because I think this is also interesting. One of the things that I had learned about the civil rights movement that there was a lot of support from the Jewish community during the civil rights era. So we sort of had that hand in hand kind of relationship back in the day. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that actually sort of goes back over 100 years. This sort of coalition and relationship between African Americans and Jewish Americans in the civil rights movement, in particular. Uh, there's a case that's many say sort of started this relationship. It was called the Leo Frank case, and it happened in Georgia, in a town just outside of a small town outside of Atlanta. A young white woman was killed in a pencil factory, and they accused Leo Frank, this Jewish. He was I guess, one of the clerks at the pencil factory. So they accused Leo Frank, a Jewish American, of killing this young white woman. Well, they convicted him and they tried to get him out of town. They took him to Marietta, Georgia to get him away from because there's a mob, that was forming. And of course, that was typical in this era. This case takes place, by the way, in 1915. So it was typical in this era for there to be mob violence against African Americans in particular. But in this case, this was a Jewish American, and this mob violence or this mob was forming to lynch him. Now they take him to
Wow.
Marietta, Georgia, but the mob finds out where he was, and guess what? They went down and took him out of the jail and lynched him. Okay,
Wow.
hung him to a tree, and I think and it shocked Jewish Americans so much that this could happen to them. This violence that had been perpetrated against African Americans on sort of on a regular basis, and at this time now has spread to Jewish Americans, and of course, basically they were using anti-Semitism to justify this treatment of this young Jewish American. Well, um, at the time, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People had just formed in 1909, and they were searching for something to do. That is, they started an organization, but they really didn't know what to do. And this was mainly some white liberals and one black person, W.E.B. Du Bois, and then, of course, the local branches had more African Americans. But the national board at that time for the NAACP was white Americans, some Jewish Americans, and W.E.B. Du Bois as the only African American. So after this lynching of Leo Frank in 1915, Jewish Americans then decided we're going to support the NAACP, and so they start pouring money into the NAACP. It helped the NAACP to hire its first executive secretary, James Weldon Johnson, and then they started taking on these cases, investigating lynchings, and again, Jewish Americans sort of became the mainstays of the NAACP in terms of keeping it going, financing it, and then also once some of the other organizations were formed, like CORE in 1942. Of course, Dr. King had a Jewish American who was one of his major supporters in SCLC, and then SNCC also had a lot of support up until 1966 when Stokely Carmichael made the Black Power speech. But anyway, and then of course Jewish Americans joined some of the campaigns in the South because they saw that this fight that African Americans were leading was also their fight because racism and anti-Semitism sort of went hand in hand. So this coalition of this Black Jewish coalition occurred in the civil rights movement, it occurred in the labor movement, and it continued to exist. And I'll just offer a time when it was stressed, and I don't know whether it's ever come back. When Farrakhan started going around the country making anti-Semitic speeches, but up until then, this Jewish and African American coalition was very important in terms of social justice movements in this country.
And that's what we need. We need to come together,
Hmm.
as people. And
Yes.
I love that history
Hmm.
that we were able to come together. And I hope that we can continue
Uh
that,
huh.
in our communities and
Yes.
for, multiple races of people to come together,
Uh huh.
right, to fight injustice and systemic racism. So, looking ahead,
Hmm.
what do you envision as the future trajectory of Black History Month? And, how might it continue to evolve in response to like ongoing social and political and, cultural changes? Because some people are saying that we don't need Black History Month anymore, right?
Uh huh.
And then we have, I feel like, some
Sure.
younger African Americans who, you know, maybe a little bit out of touch. Not so much since, you know, George Floyd. Yeah, I think that kind of brought things back into vision as like, hey, all is not well. Sure, we had a Black president, but look, there is still a lot that's broken. So, what do you think about future of Black History Month and whether or not it's necessary and what people in the country are going to begin to feel about it?
Sure. Well, again, I've been celebrating Negro History Week and Black History Month. I guess I could argue for over 50 years. I think the first one I celebrated and supported was way back in 1974. In fact, that is 50 years now that I think about it. Um,
Yep.
and so I've actually been asked this question before in terms of, will there ever come a time that we will not need Black History Month? And my answer was no, but I was again sort of hesitant and I was wishy washy about it because I was hoping that there would come a time that we would not need Black History Month. But based on what I've seen, based on some of the recent developments with these state legislatures and governors, equating Black history with critical race theory, uh, we're definitely going to need Black History Month for a while. And as I said, we're going to have to continue to fight these state legislatures. We're going to have to continue to work with these public schools. We're going to have to continue to teach these courses in the communities ourselves until you know it's sort of picked up as part of or I'll say the general curriculum in this country, as well as sort of the general environment. Now, I'm going to confess, I've actually seen more proliferation of African American history in our culture today than ever before. I see corporations still and federal government agencies celebrating Black History Month, but of course, I wish they would do more than just
Right.
to focus on Black History Month. But at least they're trying to do something. Black History Month is in the popular culture. You know, I like it. For example, I watched the basketball game the other night, and the LA Lakers had on these shirts, promoting Black History Month. And I said, "Wow, look at that!" So
We love it, right?
and 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 so you see these little things. And I've seen some of the women's league have on shirts about Black Lives Matter, and so you see this stuff
Yes.
actually being promoted in popular culture outside of Black History Month, and indeed these stories being told. And then you see one of the great things I think that has happened is that some of the rappers and even Beyonce have become socially conscious about the African American experience, and
Yes.
her film Homecoming, right on the money, and telling these great stories about Black colleges and about our music and the heritage of Black people in American arts, just not just African American, but in American arts in general. So
Right.
I think we're going to be okay. I think in spite of these politicians, they can't tamp it down. They can't suppress it because it's too widespread now. People are picking up the messages and the information. Now, when I started teaching Black history way back in 1975, I tell people I had to run off my own handouts on a mimeograph machine. Um, by the late 70s and the 1980s, we were able to pirate, and I shouldn't be confessing that somebody will arrest me. We were able to pirate stuff off of PBS, okay, in order to show in our classes. Um, so I'm creating my own handouts. Uh, it just was wild in those days because there wasn't this information in our culture that
Right.
was available on the internet, for example, that would support your classes. And I had no access to those films, like Stormy Weather and The Green Pastures and uh, Cabin in the Sky. Now I got those actually on DVD. And so I got all these resources now that I can use in my classes. Whereas when I started in 75, all that kind of stuff was hard to come by. Um, we're in the process of designing an exhibition at the museum on African Americans and the arts. And one of the things we're going to use is this 10-volume set of Soul Train. I think I showed you that set, right?
What?
Yeah, this
Okay, wait, y'all. The
10
African American
DVDs.
Museum
Yeah.
of Dallas is going to have a Soul Train
It's going to be part of an exhibit.
I
Yes, and we're going to play episodes from Soul Train to show the
love
fashion,
it.
to show the dances, to show some of the highlights, like Al Green
What?
singing "Love and Happiness." Oh my
Love,
goodness!
happiness. This is going to be fantastic. Okay, I have to make a request and I will help put this together.
Okay.
But I'm telling you, can we have a party with a Soul Train line? I volunteer to to help with the party, to coordinate the party
Sure,
with the Soul Train
sure,
line.
yes,
Okay, y'all, it's happening.
uh
It
huh,
is on and popping.
sure. See, but again, that's an example of all the resources that are available to parents, to teachers, to anybody that wants to create a course in African American history and use all this wonderful material that we have created over the years to popularize and tell our culture and to tell our stories. And like I said, I'm just so excited that I'm still around to use all of this stuff, and I don't have to pirate stuff off of PBS anymore in order to show films about Black history. And I don't have to use the old mimeograph machine to turn out handouts.
Technology is
Yes,
wonderful
it is.
for us being able to share
Mhm.
knowledge and information and to
Yes,
keep our history out
yes.
there and going. I love it.
Hmm.
I love it. And like you, just seeing the people, the artists, the sports teams out there celebrating our history. Let me tell you, I was so excited. I was coming from New Orleans and I landed at Love Field and it was the 1st of February. And like I just come from New Orleans. New Orleans is full of history, right? It's just the history just smacks you in the face. And so I'm thinking about the history of the country, the history of my people. I'm all up in that in New Orleans. And I get off the plane back to Dallas and they have like an LED screen and up flashes as I'm walking, to go get my bags. It's like Happy Black History Month. Can I tell you, it's like, I was like, yes, we are being like honored and celebrated. Like, thank you, Dallas Love Field.
Hmm.
You see me. I am valued.
Hmm.
Thank you. And it was huge. I was just so excited. I
Yeah.
was like kind of all giddy inside just by seeing that. And then I was like, it's Black History Month.
Hmm.
We about to celebrate.
Yes, absolutely.
So a lot of our listeners are single women, single mothers. And I recently got an email from an educator. And in her signature, there was a quote I had never seen before, but I saw it and I was like, wow, it just opens up the doors to so many questions. And this was the quote. To know the condition of a people, one has only to know the status of its women. And it was Dr. Martin Dulaney.
Hmm.
I was like, wow, I had never heard that quote. What do
Wow.
you think about that and the status of African American women today, in the US and what it says about us?
Hmm.
I know it's a big question, but
Well,
however you want to kind of.
just some background on Martin R. Delaney. We call him the father of Black nationalism because in the 1850s he went to Africa He was so frustrated with the racism here that free African Americans like himself faced that he went to Africa, did a survey in the Niger River Valley, trying to find land that where all the free blacks from the United States could leave here and go to Africa and find a place to live and equality and freedom. So we call Martin R. Dulaney the father of Black nationalism. That quote comes from his book, The Condition, Elevation, Destiny of the Colored Race, that he published in 1854. I read that book 25 years ago or so, but it's a great book. And indeed, that's a key quote about knowing the condition of the women. Knowing the condition of the women tells you the condition of the people. Yeah.
Well, Black women keep on thriving,
Yes.
keep on going, and keep on educating our babies. Taking care of business, right?
Yes.
And keep on educating our babies about our history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So are there any closing words that you have for our listeners?
No. Well, we never got around to talking about Frankie Beverly and Mays and that famous song that I use in my class.
Yes.
When
Let's talk about
last
that.
year when I did that, I think I told you the presentation I used to do on Black resistance was about the Civil War and how Black people, starting in 1861, started running away from slavery. So I'd play Frankie Beverly and Mays as running away, leaving a bad situation, running away. We need some rejuvenation. And it's almost like that song was made for that period in time, because we started running away by the hundreds and then the thousands in 1861, and we made slavery the key issue in the Civil War. But again, most people don't know that we were the ones. Then when these people start running away, they leave this terrible, bad situation, and their lives are just rejuvenated. When they get away from slavery, they get to the army that's going to protect them from their former slave masters. So it's just perfect in terms of the historical context of 1861 and 1862 and our role when we run away by the hundreds and then by the thousands, and then eventually, about 1 million Black people run away from slavery at the beginning of the war. They literally just destroyed the institution of slavery. And at the same time, I said they made slavery the key issue of the war. They forced Lincoln to have to deal with them because, he was being, I describe him as sort of being namby-pamby and vacillating about, well, what are you going to do about slavery? And he's talking, well, I don't know. I think I'm just going to leave it alone. But all these people running away forced him to act because he had no choice. We made that happen.
We made it happen.
Yeah.
So we brought on the emancipation.
Mm-hmm.
Something for us, again, to celebrate and to know.
Yes.
And the bravery of those people who ran away, huge, like just, ooh.
Yes.
I just get chills when I think about the things that these people put on the line to run away and to get out of a bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
I just get the chills, when I see, and even when I see the movies, I just get the chills like,
yeah.
It's a lot. And so I definitely know that our ancestors, courage, strength,
strong people,
power, strong people,
determined people,
and we stand on their shoulders.
Yes, we do.
So, well, thank you, Dr. Dulaney. This has been absolutely delightful and, once again, full of good info. And I am inspired to continue learning about our history as African Americans and to, enjoy my Black History Month 365 days of the year.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you for joining us.
You're really welcome, and I enjoyed it. All right. Yeah.
We'll see you again, hopefully next time on the podcast. Thanks for listening, and a big thank you to Dr. W. Marvin Dulaney for joining us today and just empowering us and educating us. I hope something you learned today inspired you and that you'll pass it on. We'd love to have you back, so make sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out our website at marriagesqueeze.com to get the latest updates and happenings on the docuseries. We'll see you next time. Until then, I'm sending lots of love your way.